ESPN has released their latest rankings headed into the 2025 NFL season, and your Detroit Lions is ranked number 5. This is a ranking that I'm not too surprised by. I thought there would be a little bit better overall, but if you look at the teams in front of them, it can kind of make sense. I know the Lions were ranked number 4, but they kind of dropped down to number 5. But if you look at number 4, it's Baltimore. If you look at number 3, it's Buffalo. If you look at number 2, it's Kansas City. And then if you look at number 1, it's the defending Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia Eagles. So if you look at the teams overall in front of them, it kind of makes sense. But also, if you look at the bigger picture, 3 out of those 4 teams are AFC teams. The only NFC team that's in front of them is obviously the defending Super Bowl champions Eagles, which they absolutely deserve that spot because they completely dominated all the way through to win the Super Bowl. They even dominated in the Super Bowl as well, and they didn't really lose too many key pieces to that team. You obviously have that great offensive line. You have that great defense. But then you look on the other end of things, and the conversation that's really being talked about the Lions is obviously the coordinators being lost, but then you have Frank Ragnow being lost. You have a couple other really impactful players that are not there anymore for the Lions. Now, obviously, the Lions do have a lot of talent still. You still have a Jahmyr Gibbs. You still have a David Montgomery. You still have Jared Goff. You still have Jamo. You still have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Defensively, you still have Aiden Hutchinson. He's back. That's a really big thing for you. You have Sam Laporta. You also have Jack Campbell, Alex Anzalone. You brought in DJ Reed. You also brought in a couple other guys that should have impact on your team. You look at it overall, is this team for Detroit better, and is that the reason why they're number 5 in this ranking? Overall, there is obviously still a ton of talent there. Is this team better than they were last year? As of right now, if you look on paper, because of the question marks without Frank Ragnow, because of Kevin Zeitler not being there, I don't think you can say that the offensive line is better. Now, obviously, it's another year to grow, but I think you have a little bit more of question marks about this team than maybe the teams like Baltimore, then Buffalo, then Kansas City, than the Eagles. I think if you really do want to argue one point in this, that you could maybe say that the Lions are better than Buffalo. The only reason why I say that in itself is because Buffalo, obviously the wide receiver room isn't great. It isn't as good as the Lions. I think the Lions defense will be much better this year. I think the really main reason why Buffalo is in front of the Lions is because of obviously Josh Allen. Josh Allen is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. He's shown that he's been able to drag teams that maybe not has been as talented as teams in the past. Now, I'm not saying the Buffalo Bills aren't talented. They absolutely are. But if you look at the quarterback situation, this is one of the reasons why in this article itself, basically the most pressure for the Lions on a specific player or a coach is Jared Goff. This is an absolutely huge year for Jared Goff. We all know last year that Jared Goff was getting a ton of praise. Jared Goff was getting a ton of chance every single game, and rightfully so, because he was really, really good for a lot of the year. The only 2 games that he wasn't really good in was the Houston Texans game and the Washington Commanders game. Now, I don't think you can fully blame Jared Goff on the Commanders game on that loss in the playoffs. But because of that, there's so much more pressure on Jared Goff to perform, to get to the next step. Because last year was obviously a disappointing year for the Lions because of the result in the playoff. Now, obviously, winning the NFC North, defending it again, going back-to-back. This is a huge year for Jared Goff to get the Lions back to not only that position, but to also get the Lions past that point. And if it leads to maybe not as many wins, but maybe a further playoff run, I think fans would be pretty fine with that overall. I don't think fans would be too thrilled throughout the year, but I think if they obviously go on a run in the playoffs, they would be pretty happy. But if you look at this team overall, I think the ranking is pretty fair, to be completely honest with you. The only gripe I would believe is Buffalo. I think you also have Kansas City in front of them because of Patrick Mahomes. It kind of makes sense, again, for obviously the defending Super Bowl champions, Eagles, to be in front of them. And then maybe Baltimore, you could maybe make an argument there. I know the Lions have had real issues with defending quarterbacks that can run. It was actually basically talked about today that Lamar Jackson got hurt a little bit, so that's going to be something to kind of keep an eye on for. But if you really want to focus on the goal for this Lions team is to get to the Super Bowl, I think this is a pretty fair ranking when you focus on that than the overall being fifth overall for the whole NFL. But guess what? It doesn't matter what the preseason rankings is. It matters about what you do in the regular season. So am I too upset about it? No. Do I think it could be a little bit better? Yes. But I think being too upset about being ranked fifth, which is really good in itself, is worthy of people yelling, people complaining about. No. I think it's pretty fair. I think it's pretty accurate. And I think that the Lions will obviously use this not only for motivation to hopefully end up getting into that number 1 or number 2 ranking, but also in itself, I think it's pretty decent when you look at the whole picture. But yeah, that's just my thoughts on the rankings. What are your thoughts on the rankings? Do you think it's pretty fair? Do you think the Lions should be top 3? Do you think they should be number 2? I think you can really make an argument for a top 3, definitely a top 4 ranking. But I think maybe the Lions have a little bit more question marks, especially when it comes to offensive line comparatively to the other teams, and obviously with the new coordinators as well, which I think is getting obviously overblown, the concern about there, because obviously you have John Morton, which has been a part of the Lions organization in the past. Then you have Kelvin Shepard, which it really seems like he's a great motivator, and he's been really good. And this defense is hopefully going to finally stay healthy. And I think if Aiden Hutchinson and Marcus Davenport stays healthy for this defense, I think they'll be vastly improved, which is the reason why I think that the Lions should be a little bit higher. But if we can figure out the offensive line, if the offensive line is as good as it was last year, or maybe just a slightly worse, I think this is going to be a team that should be in the conversation to win a Super Bowl. And it truly matters about winning your division, getting to the playoffs, making a run. And if it means going through home field, defend Ford Field, if it means going on the road and having to beat a team like Philly, guess what? You only have to beat them once. But you never know exactly what's going to happen. Overall, I think it's a pretty fair ranking. And yeah, that's really kind of my thoughts on the power rankings overall. Thought that they did a pretty good job with it. Only maybe 1 or 2 changes, a little bit above, but that's kind of marginal in my opinion, because I think all 5 of these teams absolutely deserve to be in the top 5. If they were below 5, if they were getting to 6, 7, and 8, I would definitely have more gripes about it. But 5, I think you can argue that heading into the season, these are the best 5 teams, and the Lions absolutely deserve to be in that conversation. So just my thoughts. What are your thoughts? Hopefully you enjoy this episode. Obviously, we have football coming up here shortly. There's going to be a ton of content coming out. We got previews of football games. We also have the Lions game coming up on Saturday against the Texans. Last preseason game before it finally starts to get legit NFL football happening here shortly. So obviously really excited about it. More content to come. And please continue to share, subscribe, like, and please continue to support the podcast.